Hello and welcome to our Retrain the Dyslexic Brain graduate case study reviews. I apologize in advance about the quality of my voice today. It appears I have picked up something from my kiddos, but I'm going to do my best. So we're really excited to be able to share another one of these reviews. So if you've been part of our community for a while, you know that we do share one of these every other week. And so I hope that not only will this review today inspire you, you might listen along and think, oh my goodness, this sounds exactly like me, or this sounds exactly like my kiddo. But I hope that you can leave with a deeper understanding of just how important it is to really help the brain to connect letters and sounds together and what happens when you do. So today, our case that we're going to discuss is Abby, who was 9 at the time she started our program. She did have a birthday, so she did become 10. But she just made massive, massive progress in every single area that we tested her in. So she went from being only 45% accurate in phonological awareness, which was her brain's ability to actually hear all of the sounds and words and be able to connect those to letters, be able to manipulate those. Like, she was not even half of the time accurate. And she shifted that to being 95% accurate in her ability to do that within just a few months. And so we're going to talk about this, but holy cow, did her brain have a massive shift in being able to connect letters and sounds, which has just had a tremendous impact on everything else. So her scores on the wide range achievement test 5 in reading went from the 25th percentile to the 53rd percentile in just a couple of months. Her scores on the RAP5 spelling went from the 12th percentile to the 15th, which is statistically significant. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But in addition, she had another 10 items that were phonetically correct, where she was just missing one letter, which would have put her at the 70th percentile for spelling. This client did use this program exclusively as their ELA curriculum. So sometimes that happens where we get more of a true picture of what happens if we only do this program. We're not doing any other school. We're not doing any other programming, nothing else. It's just this program. What was the impact on that? So we get to see that in this case because the client used this program as her exclusive ELA curriculum for homeschool. But Shanna, her mom, just said, oh my gosh, it's just a complete turnaround from what it was before. She has a new love for learning, which is exactly what I have always wanted for her. So with that, let's dive in. So, gosh, I'm noticing my hair is a very different color in this picture. Anyhow, I'm Dr. Rebecca Troy, and I am the owner and founder of Retrain the Dyslexic Brain. But what we are doing and what we're about to share in this case study is neurologically based exercises that we coach families to do from the comfort of their own home. So we help clients globally, and whether it is that they don't have access to someone with dyslexia support in their area, or they're living in an entirely different country where people don't even use that terminology, or they live in an area where there is dyslexia support, but it's not moving them along and they're not making any progress at all, and they're just frustrated as all get out. So what we do is we supply families with the neuroscience-based techniques so that within 10 to 15 minutes a day, in just a couple of months and weeks, that these families can massively, massively shift the data and the performance of their child with our coaching and support. So everything that you are about to hear is something that we coach Shanna through in 10 to 15 minutes a day for just a few months. But she did this in her home with Abby, and she was able to get these results in that interval. So just kind of have that in the back of your mind as you're listening. So as we get started, I do always want to begin with the neurobiological origins of dyslexia so that you understand what it is and what it isn't. So on your screen here, you can see that there are two fMRIs of brains, one without dyslexia and one with dyslexia, as we're asking these people to do a language task. So if we were to have these two brains at rest, we would not notice a significant difference between them. But in the case of asking them to read these words or spell this word or read this paragraph or write this essay, when the brain is asked to do a language task, you'll notice that in a typical person, you will have activity here in the back of the brain, which we call the occipital lobe, where our vision is controlled. And you'll also notice that there's significantly more activity in the parietal temporal lobes where we process. Typical person is reading something or spelling something, they have this activity in the brain that allows them to connect letters and sounds so that they can read and spell. But when you compare that to a person with dyslexia, you'll notice that there's literally not any activity that's happening here in the back of the brain in the visual system, and there's far less in the auditory system, which is why when you ask a kiddo with dyslexia to spell something, they're going to add letters in that don't belong. They are going to omit letters that should have been there. They might not hear a vowel in a word that you would have expected that they would have heard, and that is because there is this disconnect in the brain between sight and sound. It also happens when you're reading a word. So if the eyes are up here and you see the word cat, well, instead of being able to bring that letter into the back of the brain and process what is visually seen and connect it to sound, because of the lack of neurological activity, cat might be read cat the first time, but I might see that word, the same exact word 2 lines later, and it's like, I've never even seen that before. And if it's on the page 5 different times, I might struggle to read it all 5 of the times, or I might get it 1 or 2, and then it's like I've never seen it before on the other times. Or it might be that I get to a multiple syllable word. Maybe I'm really intelligent and I've memorized so many words that I can quote unquote get by. But when I am addressing a word that I've never seen before, and I actually have to use my brain's ability to connect letters and sounds to decode it, I'm unable to do that. And so I might just get the first letter or two, and then everything else is a guess after that. And those things happen to kids with dyslexia or people with dyslexia because the brain has not been able to properly connect letters and sounds together. And so this is the same image, type of image, but this is an EEG, but it's showing the same thing. So a typical reader has got this neurological activity, but a reader with dyslexia just does not. But what's important to know, and what is going to give you so much hope and power in your child's journey, is understanding that the brain is pliable. We used to think that the world was flat. Just like we used to think that intelligence was fixed, that there's nothing that you can do about this, that you just have to live with it, you have to learn to accommodate. But that just couldn't be further from the truth. And so we know through increased capacity in neural imaging studies that the brain does change. It changes depending on how we exercise, it changes depending on what we eat, it changes depending on our stress, it changes depending on so many factors in our life. And it's not just for little kids. Your brain has the capacity to change throughout your life in both positive and negative ways. But the earlier that you intervene, the more pliable that the brain is, and the better that you have the ability to respond and avoid some of those really emotional, heartbreaking things that kids can tell themselves and live with for the rest of their life if they believe that they're incapable or that they're stupid. So it's just so, so powerful for you as a parent to know that the brain is capable of change. And then here's a real life story of what happens when we change it. So we interviewed Abby's mom, Shanna, and we asked her about Abby's life before she was in the program and after, to kind of share from a personal level beyond the data what it's like to have a child struggling with this and what it's like after you shift how their brain functions. So Abby is homeschooled, and before she started working with us, she was struggling over every sound, every letter, even numbers. She didn't even like hearing Shanna read aloud to her. She didn't like audiobooks, and she almost threw a fit every time. Shanna said it was a struggle all around, and I didn't want that for her. We had to work so hard to overcome every little obstacle. And so, because she's homeschooled, I didn't have outside influences telling her that she was struggling. Shannon was always very encouraging and told Abby that she would get things eventually, but she struggled the right way to support this. So Shanna is dyslexic herself, and she does have vivid memories of what that experience was like for her. And she remembers going to tutoring. She remembers having to learn and memorize all of the rules. And she remembers how laborious and ineffective that felt for her. Um, and so she said, I don't want that for Abby. I was just waiting for the thing to come around that would be what I was looking for. So in her inner circle of friends and in her networking of homeschooling moms, she said, I do have friends whose children do tutoring. And having experienced it myself and watching it from the outside, these parents know nothing. So they send them in, they pay for the tutoring, but they don't know if they're growing. They don't know if they're making progress, if they don't know if they're struggling with what. More importantly, they don't know how to help them beyond just continuing to send them to these tutorings. She said they just don't know what's going on. And I want to be able to teach my child and help them myself. And so she said it is hard as a parent. You almost feel like you're failing your child because you can't find the thing to help them learn. And a lot of parents do share that there is this tremendous guilt that occurs, that you feel like, here's this kid and I'm trying my best, but we just keep failing them, and we're doing all of the things and they're just not making progress. Shanna shared that as well, saying, gosh, it's just terribly, terribly hard to watch your child struggle because she is great at so many things. She's very physical. She's got all of these, gifts and creativity, but she really only could sit down for 5 to 10 minutes. Her memory was not there. It was always a struggle. And so I'm sure for those of you listening, you probably resonate so much with all of what Shanna is saying. But what's important to know is that there is a shift. And so after she did the program, and even while she was doing the program, she started to notice changes in Abby. So Shanna said, in general, the whole program is a different way of looking at dyslexia. It was nothing like what I had when I was a kid. So we do not do rules at all in here. Absolutely nothing that we do is rule-based. But Shanna said from her perspective, especially when remembering what she went through herself, she said this program is so simple. You are always pushed with the rules and things to remember in other programs, and this made it so much easier for me. I would tell her it's not a rule, it's a pattern. And so the whole thing is different. And I went through tutoring myself for years, but Abby has so much more freedom to do and understand things. Just the change in her confidence, I would say it's like 100%. It's such a change. And so one of the really fun things about Abby's story is that she had a new love for learning, which is exactly what Shanna wanted from her. It was just a complete turnaround from where she was before. She doesn't even get frustrated now. It's not there anymore. So whereas before she was having like little tantrums and meltdowns every time she was asked to read or do anything, she's now saying like, I already did my school, which, for Shanna, she was laying out the work for her kiddos to do the night before so that it was all laid out for them in the morning. Abby actually got to the point where she would independently fill out all of her homework because she could, because she was capable, because she was independent at reading and writing. And so she said to Shanna one day, like, I already did my school, Mom, and she just about fell on the floor. They listen to books now at bedtime and in the car. She enjoys reading now and she can comprehend it. Shanna just said every module that Abby went through, she would have a light bulb moment. So there was always something that she could learn and catch on to that made it easier. And the 20 minutes would be up and Abby would say, like, can I do some more of these? Can we do some more? Knowing that she has the tools and the power is mind blowing, and it has changed everything from her for her. So, just such a heartwarming difference. And so to hear from a kiddo whose brain just really could not connect letters and sounds, the difference. And I think what I want you to hear is just the shift in the confidence and the independence that Abby has. So from like really not being able to hear any sounds and words, not being able to read any words at all, to independently doing schoolwork is a huge, huge shift. And so not only did she feel relief herself, Shanna, as a mom, knowing like, oh my gosh, I can actually do something else now and I don't have to be sitting beside you the entire time while you're trying to learn. Abby felt confident knowing that she had those tools and the power to do that on her own, which she said is just exactly what I've always wanted for her. And so, when I asked Shanna about some imparting wisdom or advice that she would have for other parents, she shared this. You are your child's biggest advocate. You are wanting the best for them. And so it's amazing what knowledge can do for someone, especially your child that you love dearly, and no one's going to take better care of that than you. So we were talking more specifically about what's it like to have to go through this? Like, you were dyslexic yourself. Was it difficult for you to go through the program? She said, no, absolutely not. But what was really, really empowering for her is to understand how to help her to see exactly where Abby was at, to know exactly what Abby needed to do to turn the page. And nobody was going to ensure more than Shanna that that was going to get done, because Abby's her baby. She wanted her success more than anybody else in the world. And so by giving tools to mom and saying, here, this is what we need to do, let's coach you through that, she absolutely ensured that that got done. So let's transition and take a look at Abby's data. So as we mentioned, this phonological awareness was even lower than 50%. So she was only 45% accurate, shifted to 95. So let's just dig into each of these individually, and I'll kind of talk to you about why. So when we taught her brain to actually connect letters and sounds, she only had two little errors, excuse me, and went to 95% accurate in this skill within just a couple of months. And so this is really where we see a lot of people fall down, as they still don't have this fundamental in place. The brain isn't able to connect letters and sounds together. So even though they might have done years of intervention and years of tutoring, they still are struggling with spelling. If you ask their parents, like, how does their spelling look? They'll say, it's still just a mess. I have no idea what they're saying half the time. When they get to big words that they've never seen before, how does that go? They're still guessing. The wheels are falling off the bus, those types of things. So when you actually teach the brain to connect letters and sounds together, you can start to really massively shift what that looks like just in a short interval. So we taught Abby's brain to actually do this. 95% accurate within a couple of months. And that did have a very positive impact on her reading and spelling as well. So right now we're going to start talking about norms and statistics and percentile. So I just want to give you a little primer so that you feel like you can deeply understand this. So what you see here is what's called the normal distribution curve. And in the middle of this is the 50th percentile, or average. So we know through researchers and studies that there is an average amount of growth that a kiddo would make in an entire school year. So you start first grade, you end first grade. We know that the growth that's average is what's a 0.3 of a standard deviation, or it's where this blue line is. So we expect kids to grow as a result of being in school. That's typical, and we actually know that this is the typical amount that kids grow from year to year academically. But when you have a child that's struggling, it's really, really important that you have an intervention that's going to make them grow more than what the typical growth would be for the year. And the reason that that's so important is that we have to close the gap. So what ultimately happens is, as your kiddo is struggling, other kids are growing, and your kiddo stays in the same spot. And then other kids are growing and your kiddo stays in the same spot. So ultimately, you have what starts to feel like a chasm between where their peers are and where they are in their performance. They see it, you see it, their teacher sees it, their classmates see it, and it causes all kinds of stress and anxiety and depression, all kinds of other really negative things that we do not want, let alone like they're struggling academically to do what's being asked. So we have to find interventions that make more progress than typical. So if an intervention had a moderate statistical significance, it would have moved to 0.5. If an intervention had a statistically significant impact on the child, meaning we know with confidence that this intervention massively moved the child, it's going to move a 0.8 or almost a standard deviation or from one of these lines to another one of these lines. So let's take a look at what that looked like for Abby and how she did. So before she started working with us, her reading was at the 25th percentile. So she did have some words that she was able to memorize, but really reading on her own and decoding was just not there at all. If she would have made what a typical kid would have made in an entire school year, she would have gone to this yellow. If she would have been in an intervention that would have made that statistically significant growth, the stuff that we're massively celebrating, she would have gone to this brownish color. But Abby actually moved an entire standard deviation in just a couple of months. So massively, massively closing this gap. She moved up to the 53rd percentile, meaning that she is actually above average in her ability to decode words. So it's just, again, teaching the brain to connect letters and sounds together has a massive, massive impact on other skills like your reading ability. And the same thing happened for Abby with spelling. So before she started, she was at the 12th percentile, and that typical growth would have moved her up just this teeny little bit. So much so that I think it's kind of hiding under this brown one. But statistically significant growth would have moved her to this brown one, but her spelling score was above what we know statistically significant growth would be at the 15th percentile. So she massively moved in her spelling performance as well. In addition, she had 10 other items that she spelled correctly. She was just one letter off. So it was just the pattern that she didn't know. Maybe the word had an EE and she put EA instead. And so had she had those right, that would have put her at the 70th percentile for spelling. So again, just going to show that when you teach the brain to connect letters and sounds together, it can have a very, very massive impact on reading and spelling in a very, very short period of time. So I do want to celebrate Shanna throughout this process because these results happen because of the partnership between Shanna and our team. So Shanna remained positive and steadfast in the belief that her daughter deserved more and would improve. She showed up to be coachable. She created space for consistency and routine for her and her daughter. They did this every day. She consistently did the work to make this change, and she really remained her daughter's biggest advocate throughout the process. And again, as Shanna said, knowing that she has the tools and the power is mind-blowing. It's changed everything for her. So sometimes people ask, like, well, is this typical? I know that you guys do these every other week. Is this typical? Yes, absolutely, it's typical, and we've actually measured that statistic out for you. So again, this is what an average kid grows in an entire school year. If you have an intervention that's going to be statistically significant, it grows that 0.8, but our average kiddo graduate in the program is going double that. They're going a standard deviation and a half, almost to 2 full standard deviations of growing. And so why is that so critical? It's because when you make that kind of progress from an intervention and you massively change what the child is capable of, maybe it's not perfect, but you close the gap between them and their peers. So if you want to dig more into educational statistics, I have a citation down here for you if you want to kind of geek out and get curious and interested about these things. But our statistics would be at the top of this chart for the 252 most influential effects on learning. So we're just super proud of the data and the performance of clients here. But more importantly, from a human level, and if I can be an advocate for kids for a moment, why it's so critical that you close the gap for kids is they ultimately miss out on opportunities because they still struggle. So when they have to get pulled out of class to go to an intervention, or they have to miss lunch because they're getting extra support, or they have to do homework for 3 hours in the night because it took their brother or sister 20 minutes and it takes 3 hours. Or, there's just ultimately things or opportunities where you could have read in front of church, or you could have done something that you can't because you're unable. And so there just can be these struggles, current and ongoing, and in the future, that ultimately change the beliefs that you have about yourself. And so here's where I think it becomes the most detrimental. When you believe that you're stupid, when you believe that you can't, when you believe that you're not good enough, that absolutely determines the amount of potential that you can tap into. And so the potential that you believe that you have is going to determine the actions that you take. Do I want to go for this? Do I want to try? Do I want to? Well, if I believe that I'm stupid, if I believe that I can't, my likelihood of doing that is gone down exponentially. And because of the actions that I take, it's going to absolutely influence the results that I get. And the results that I get are going to in turn keep going into the beliefs that I have about myself. So it's this vicious cycle. And so what we really have to do is to shift the beliefs of what is possible, shift the potential, shift the action, shift the results. So when you do this, and you actually help a kiddo to make massive growth and close the gap between themselves and their peers, they not only improve their academic performance, but they increase self-esteem and confidence. They have better overall mental health and greater access to opportunities. So if you are somebody who is listening out there and you think, you know what, I think my kiddo does struggle with reading, but I'm just not sure, I would invite you to join our Dyslexia Discovery Workshop. It is intended to help parents to untangle through some norm referenced assessments to figure that stuff out. So in just 20 minutes in the comfort of your home, without having to go do a full neuropsych evaluation that can be thousands of dollars, we're happy to help you to untangle that, to say, does my kiddo really have dyslexia, or do they really just not like reading? But based on that data, you can then make a really good plan to figure out what comes next and how to best support your child. And also, if you are someone who is just like Shanna, who is trying to figure this out for your child, maybe you just got this diagnosis, or maybe you've had it for a really long time. But either way, your child really, really needs support and movement. I would invite you to have a complimentary call with a member of our team. So what we'll do is take a deep dive and learn as much as we can about your child and whether or not we can help. And if we can help, and you believe that you would be a good candidate, you'd show up, you'd do the work, you'd be just like Shanna, super coachable, then we would be happy to walk you through what it looks like to join our team and be one of our client graduates, and hopefully have you be one of our celebrations that we're doing every other week as well, where we've just absolutely transformed your child's life. So again, if you are ready for that, just reach out to our support team at support@retrainthedyslexicbrain.com, and we're happy to help you to get organized and get these services accessible to you.